Geico presents Our Town, Season 2, a 30-minute podcast produced by Best Bart Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks. Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance. Now, here's your host, Andy Ockershausen.
This is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen, and I'm so pleased to have a special guest who's really a WMAL personality, but he's part of what we are here, and that is a major market radio station. And people listen to this man. We'll spend the next half hour or so talking to him about his life in our town, which we consider so important, his friendship with Supreme Court Justice Scalia, his law partner and lovely wife, Victoria. I got that right, Joe. I didn't say Vicky. And the passion he has for the law. He's my friend, a local treasure, and a special guest, Joe diGenova. Welcome to Our Town.
Great to be here with you, Andy.
Back on WMAL, which you never left. I did,
That's
but
right.
You stayed.
That's right. Every Monday morning, 7:05.
We never. My wife just lived for that Monday morning. I thought she lived for me, but she lived for the radio show.
That's all right.
But Joe, you've had a spectacular career in our town, and yet you are not from our town. You're a Wilmington boy.
I'm from Wilmington, Delaware, the hotbed of Eastern radicalism, home of the DuPonts, where nothing ever happens except people sit around and make money and go to private clubs. It's a lovely little town. Went to a nice little Catholic
Fabulous
boys' school.
town. Christiana River.
Yeah.
I went through basic training up there in Delaware for the Air Force, and one of the highlights of my life was having my first submarine. Oh, they called it a hoagie.
Right.
The best bread I ever had was Wilmington, Delaware.
Absolutely. I
That's
remember.
what I remember the most.
Yeah, I remember being drafted and then going to the U.S. Post Office in Wilmington, getting on a bus and going to Philadelphia for my physical.
The hospital?
Yeah.
Naval
Oh, my
Hospital?
God. Just awful experience. That was in the middle of the Vietnam War, baby.
Well, I was in the middle of the Korean War, and thank God I was at the end of it, because I was reminding, we saw something of a tool company called Thule, and I was one time on order to go to Thule, Greenland, and I quickly used all my friends to get out of that. I'm not going to Greenland. But Joe, and then you went to high school in
Salesianum School for Boys, Oblates of St. Francis de Sales. Great school. I had a great time there, and then went to
great school.
Yeah, great.
We're involved with this Don Bosco effort. Cristo Ray, Janice, and I are. And
I'm a great believer in Catholic schools for boys and girls. I think it's a great thing to have kids separated, educated separately. I think it's a wonderful thing. The boys and girls all grow up differently. And it's very, very exciting. I mean, it's really fun.
Wonderful thing.
Yeah. We didn't have to worry about transgender bathrooms back in the 1960s. Let me tell you.
But you went through school, and then you decided to go to the university in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I went to Georgetown to go to law school, and I came here in 1967 and never left. Been here since
what a blessing for our
1967.
town.
It's hard to believe, but that's 50 years.
I know, isn't that great?
50 years.
Joe, was Ed Bennett Williams a professor there then?
He was. I did not have him, though.
Downtown.
Yeah,
They were downtown.
it was the old law school.
Fifth Street,
the
right?
one there, Fifth and E.
Right. Where is it now?
The fire trap. Now it's down
Back
right
on
off
campus?
95. No, it's down. No, it's down right downtown, right off of Louisiana and.
Oh, is it? I didn't
Mass.
know that.
Yeah, it's
I
right on the
remember
corner.
my kids that I knew grew to school.
New Jersey and Mass.
Went to downtown to Georgetown. That was a surprise to
Right
people.
next to the Hyatt.
But that was a great education. It's a city school.
Yeah. Well,
correct?
back then, Georgetown Law School had a great faculty. There were some liberals, some conservatives, some moderates. Now it's all left wing nuts. So I don't give them any money. They get no money from me. They hate prosecutors. They have the most left wing faculty. I mean, they're just crazy.
Well, that's any university in America. What is new about that, Joe?
Well, they're crazies at Georgetown.
If you want to go to a straight faculty, go to
I
England.
stopped giving money to Georgetown, the main campus, when they took the crucifixes off the wall because they didn't want to offend the other students. I said, I thought it was a Catholic school, and they took the crucifixes off the wall. I said, I guess you don't want my money.
Well, Joe, I never heard that story, but it's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
It's the oldest Catholic university in America.
And it's run by Jesuits, so there's the problem.
Yeah, well, true. But like they said, you're not a Jesuit, you're a Catholic. That's a quote. Well, that was the introduction of you to the law, but what was the introduction of you to the military? You were telling me they took you to Philly.
I was rejected because I have what they call industrial blindness in my left eye. I got about 50% of my sight. And they said, here's what's so stupid about the draft. They wouldn't take me. So I said, well, I said, wait a minute, I can do paperwork. I'm a pre-law student. I can do that. They said, no. The doctor said to me, we are not going to pay your medical bills for the rest of your life. Can you believe that? This was ridiculous. I could have been behind the lines. I could have been a warrant officer. I could have been a supply master. They didn't want me.
Well, you know, they'd say, I remember this, the World War II story.
I didn't go to Canada, though. I did go for my physical and got rejected.
Well, Joe, there was a story on World War II that they found some guy that was partially blind, but they found another guy that with bad arms. So they said, we'll put you with the bad arm guy, and he'll be able to see you, and you'll be able to do this. You got good arms.
Yeah.
So they
Well, that was World War II. It was different.
Oh, the world changed.
Believe me.
They were taking everybody.
The Vietnam War was a disgrace in every conceivable way. What we did to the American troops is what was terrible.
You know, I'm reading, and I've been quoting stories that I found out from reading about the Korean War and the mistakes that were made by, which was really not a new war. That was still part of World War II.
Sure, it was a carryover.
It was still going on. Yeah. And of what things our country went through in the early 50s. It was incredible with that war, and nobody knew about it much. You would go down the street and ask somebody about Busan. They didn't know what you were talking about.
Incheon. It was the forgotten war. And the soldiers from that war, just like the Vietnam soldiers, never got the adulation that they deserved for serving their country. It was a police action. Remember, that's what it was called. And
it's the best memorial in our city, is the memorial for the war. Those guys.
Absolutely fabulous.
In their ponchos walking up.
It's amazing.
Great.
It's just amazing.
But Joe, I had part of that. You missed that, so we both missed the big war. But you had a great time in your law. How did you go from being a prosecutor, did you become a prosecutor immediately, or did you serve as a clerk?
Well, what happened was I clerked for a great judge on the D.C. Court of Appeals named George R. Gallagher, who was a remarkable guy.
I know that name.
He during the 1950s, he had been in charge with a couple of other people of prosecuting the American Communist Party. And he became a great teacher to me about internal security, national security, and I really learned at his feet. He encouraged me to become an assistant U.S. attorney, which I did.
He was a prosecutor?
Yes, he had worked in the Justice Department.
Then he became a judge.
Then he became a judge, and he encouraged me to become a prosecutor, which I did. And I became an assistant U.S. attorney in the 70s, and then went to work up on the Hill for Senator Mathias for 7 years.
Mac Mathias.
Good old Mac. Great guy.
Yeah, great guy, and we did a lot of work with him. Fortunately, he was a listener. He lived here in our town.
Oh, yeah, real
so
good.
We knew Mac through all the promotions that we did with him.
Great guy.
Mathias was one of the few remaining live Republicans in the state of Maryland.
Yeah, he was a serious guy. He got elected statewide many, many times.
He was a congressman, right?
Yes, from Frederick.
Well, was Connie Morella take his seat eventually?
Yes, that's exactly right.
We just talked to Connie. You know, she's in that American Battle Monument.
Right.
She travels the world with that.
We visited her in Paris when she was the.
Is that right? When she was
the ambassador to the OEO.
She give you the tour?
Oh yeah, it was great. We had a wonderful time.
That's a first-class place to be, ambassador.
You can't beat that gig with a beautiful home in the heart of Paris and staff.
Oh, and
Tony forgot how to make toast.
Well, and you know, that's such a plum for her, and we love Connie.
She deserved it. She deserved it.
But did you work with John Tower now?
Well, actually, I did. John Tower actually was the first person, along with some other people, Howard Baker, who brought me to Capitol Hill for my first gig. I was brought up there to work on the church committee, which, as you remember, in the 1970s was investigating the CIA and the intelligence community and the FBI. And so I worked for Tower and Baker, and that was one of my greatest experiences was working for those two, because I'll never forgive Sam Nunn for what he did to John Tower when they wanted to make John Tower Secretary of Defense, and Nunn went after him and chopped him down.
Right.
You know, there's a great story about Sam Nunn. Remember, he ran for president, so he
did.
He had to resign from Burning Tree.
Because
it's it's completely no women, no I think the only black was Vernon Jordan, and so he resigns, right? So he does this ridiculous unsuccessful run for president, does Senator Nunn. So he comes back right away afterwards and he says, "I'd like to rejoin," and they said, "No way." And I said, "That's John Tower's revenge. They wouldn't let him back in Burning Tree. He had to play on public courses for the rest up until now."
People always tell me the average age for the members out there is deceased.
That's right, deceased.
At Burning Tree. But you know, John Tower, I got a quick story about John Tower. Out of the blue, he called me because he was referred to me that he was a jazz fan of some renown. He loved to listen to Felix Grant.
Yep.
Our Felix Grant.
Yeah, man.
And he said, could I come up one day or one evening and meet Felix and just sit in the studio and talk to him?
Oh, wow.
I said, Senator, we would love that. That'd be great. Please do. He said, that would be treasure to me to meet Felix. He just loved the guy. I don't know why. And I had him speak at a party for the Republicans in Alexandria, Virginia. They were running for office. And he came in and we played music. Happy Days Are Here Again. Right. He said to me, he said, "That's a New Deal song. That's not my song." He was on top of everything, wasn't he?
He's a good man. I like John Tower. He was a great senator.
A few cocktails from time to time.
I used to watch him. He was a great orator. People forget this. He would come out on the Senate floor, no papers, no pre-written speeches by staff. He used to wear these three-piece dark blue suits, pinstripe. He would stand there and he'd put his thumb in the little pocket in his vest, and he would talk for 1 hour, never miss a beat, perfect speech, and had no papers. I just would sit there mesmerized watching the guy. He was a classic senatorial
He'd
speaker.
worked in a radio station, down in Texas.
Yeah, you could tell he was a he was a skilled orator. There are very few of those left. You look at the Senate today, it's like McDonald's. It's like talking to somebody who's making change for you. There are no great and Schumer is the worst.
Oh,
the only thing he hasn't done is cry on the Senate floor. He hasn't cried on the Senate floor yet. I think that's coming to a theater near you.
He's close to it this morning.
Yeah, God.
Well, but he can appear anywhere. He is Mr. Ready.
Yeah.
He's ready to speak at a moment's notice, no matter what the subject is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well,
Regrettably.
Joe, this is a great conversation, and we're talking to.
I'm glad you're having a good time.
Yeah. Andy Ockershouse, and this is Our Town. And remember, I want to remind you, Our Town is Annapolis. Our Town's in Vienna, Virginia. We go all the way to Winchester. This is the WMAL signal that can't be beat.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to Our Town.
This is Andy Ockershouse, and this is Our Town, and we're talking to Joe diGenova, the erstwhile star of WMAL Radio, who became a star back on WMAL. We're so pleased about that. And we were talking about Senator Mathias. Did you work for him when he was a congressman too?
No, I only worked for him I went to work for him in 1976.
And did he get beat, or did he give it up?
No, he gave it up. He was reelected, and then he not to run again.
But it was always Mac Mathias.
That's right.
It was one word.
That was his middle name, McCarthy.
Is that what? I didn't know that.
Charles McCarthy Mathias. McCarthy.
It is a good Irish name.
No, it was Scottish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Scottish.
I did not know that.
Yeah, McCurdy.
And you worked at the Republican convention back in Detroit. I can't remember
1980.
that.
I went there with Mac. He was the chairman of the Maryland delegation, and when I was there, we went to the ERA march, and in the middle of that march, I saw this beautiful redhead in a white Susan B. Anthony dress, and she was pretty hot. So I went up to her, and she was selling these little pins. They were gold pins. It was an elephant. It said ERA GOP, because she was trying to keep the Equal Rights Amendment in the platform. So I went up to her, and I said, "What are you selling?" She said, "I've got these beautiful gold pins." I said, "How much are they?" She said, 3. I said, "How many do you have?" She had 30. I said, "I'll give you $90. Give me them all."
Wow, what an impression!
I gave her $90. I took the gold elephants, and I said, "Do you ever come to Washington?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, why don't we have dinner?" And 10 months later, we were husband and wife.
You're a quick mover.
She was a great lady. She was lecturing at the Justice Department. She was one of the best prosecutors in the country. She had actually developed all these airport searches for the international drug smugglers. It actually went to the Supreme Court, and she won big case on drug smuggling.
She argued it herself?
No. But she was there for the argument in the Supreme Court. She drafted the brief and everything. They always make people from the Solicitor General's office do the arguments because they're used.
Have you been in front of the court?
No, only as an observer.
Right.
Only as an observer. Always would have liked to, but...
Well, did you have any cases that the court decided?
Oh, yeah. We had a couple of cases that went up to the Supreme Court when I was U.S. Attorney, and we filed
for the
a couple
District of Columbia.
Yeah, for the United States government office in the District of Columbia, right.
Well, Joe, your career is so stupendous in all the things you've done. Why didn't you follow Mac into politics? You are in politics.
Well, I never was interested in elective office, and I always felt that I was a prosecutor's prosecutor. I mean, I really believed in the system. I believed if you're a prosecutor,
and you worked hard. I know that.
Yeah, I worked too hard actually, but I believe that if you're a prosecutor, you do so many difficult dangerous and important things, that it's not a good idea to be a politician, because then forever, if you ever do anything else, people suspect your motives. They wonder why you did things. I didn't have the stomach or the interest. My interest in politics, I was a political scientist. That was my major in college. And
in Georgetown?
No, University of Cincinnati. They had some great.
Oh.
I went there because they had one of the best political science departments in the country.
That's a Catholic school, is it not?
No. That was Xavier.
Xavier, I beg your pardon.
They were in town together. And I loved political science. So to me, the way to be in politics was to be in the law and in Washington, D.C. So I came here, and my goal was to become involved in politics through the law by going to work on Capitol Hill, which I did. I worked on the Hill on all kinds of committees for MAC. Then I became a special prosecutor over in the House of Representatives, investigating the Teamsters Union in the 1990s.
Was that Beck?
For the Speaker? No, that was Kerry.
Wow.
He was the so-called reform president, who actually was not very much of a reformer. And then I got to be a special prosecutor under the statute and investigated the people who rifled Bill Clinton's passport files. You remember that back at the end of the Bush administration.
Oh, my God.
The first Bush.
Yeah, H.W.
And had the opportunity to interview Jim Baker, who was the chief of staff at the time, and a bunch of other people. Jim was represented by the hell was his name? Very famous lawyer here in town. I'll remember. Anyway, Lloyd something or other.
Plato Kachiris.
Yeah, no, wow, Plato. God bless him, man.
They're my favorite Greek
One
words.
of the best.
Plato Kachiris. That's a Mo Siegel line. He used to use that on him all the time.
Yeah.
Now, but in the 1980 was the Reagan convention, correct?
Right, 1980, and that's where I met Victoria Tunsing, my wife.
He had an opponent, did he, in the 80 convention? That was George Bush.
Yes,
before
right.
the convention.
And then that's right. And then, of course, he picked him to be VP
Right.
in a great move.
Who else was it? Just he? It was just Bush opposing Reagan. I remember.
Yeah, at that point, it was just the two of them.
I was in an ABC meeting. ABC used to own this radio station. We had an ABC meeting in Chicago, and we're sitting in a bar one night with my dear friend Ernie Fears, the first black general manager in America of a radio station, and he was WMAL FM. And we're sitting there just chatting, and who came in but George H.W. Bush, alone, no handler. It was a campaign. And he came over and sat with us, and we just had the best time. What a delightful man
was
to
a good
be
man.
with. He had a cocktail with us. You know, we wouldn't let him pay, and he accepted it, of course. But he got to meet Ernie. Ernie was a famous local guy.
Yeah.
And George, from that time on, he became, for some reason, very close. I played tennis with him, played with him on at the White House. But George H.W. was a different man. He was a great
Well, I
man.
tell you an interesting story. When I was investigating the Clinton passport file, I had to go down to Houston and interview him, President Bush. Not because just because you had to do it as part of the process.
Gotcha.
Because it was so close to the presidency, what had happened, that you had to do it. I interviewed Jim Baker and a whole bunch of other people. So I interviewed him. It was very nice. He answered all my questions, no BS. And at the end of the meeting, he said, "Come on, and let's just have a drink." So I went into his office and we started talking about our families. And I told my daughter at that time was having very serious medical problems, and he said, "Bring her down here. I'll get her into the Houston Center. We'll have her taken care of. It won't cost you a dime. Let me know. Give me the phone. I'll call her. I'll talk to her." I said, "Mr. President, that's very nice of you, but we got everything taken care of." But he just went out of his way. I mean,
That was George. That was H.W.
It was just amazing. It was just amazing.
And
he wrote me a letter after that, about a year later, when I finished the investigation and I exonerated everybody. He wrote me the loveliest note about thanking me for being so professional. And I've saved it. It's
what
good. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He didn't have to do that.
Well, I sent him one time a picture of me, and I autographed it to my pal George, Andy O. And he wrote me the nicest note back. Yeah. I've got it somewhere. He said, "I don't know who that other guy was, but you really look great, Andy." And I kept it. It's a treasure.
It was great to see him. It was
he
great to see him and Barbara at the Super Bowl. That was spectacular.
Oh my God, he didn't look good, but
no.
He says he's going to jump out of the airplane.
End of the road.
She's not going to let him do it.
He's had a long, happy, and wonderful life.
Oh my God, what a wonderful man! But so are you, Joe, and I'm so glad you're back on WMAL. Now, you don't do any prosecutor work anymore, but do you represent anybody that's? Well, of course, everybody you represent is innocent.
That's correct.
So you're the keep that up,
yes,
right?
that's very important.
Do you have a lot of high-profile clients in the crime world?
Well, no. We have a very interesting practice. We represent. Sometimes we represent countries. Sometimes we represent companies. Sometimes we represent trade associations, individuals. We do civil, criminal. We do a little lobbying.
Defense work?
Yeah. Now you can't. I'm not a prosecutor anymore. But
right.
Sometimes we do civil suits as plaintiffs. Sometimes civil suits as defendants. So we have what I call a garden variety Washington D.C. practice. We just fix things. we just fix things for people.
And a great fixer never goes to court.
That's right.
But Joe, but you could be a prosecutor if you're suing somebody. Can you go to court and prove your case?
Oh, sure.
That's
what lawyers do. Sure, civil. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you still do that, which is what a prosecutor does, proves the case.
Yeah. Well,
correct?
in civil case, you're representing a private person or a company.
I got
or something.
you.
Yeah. We do that.
And both. And how big is your firm?
Oh, it's very small. We have 4 lawyers. That's it. Me, my wife Victoria Tunsing, our son Brady Tunsing, and a wonderful young partner named David Cluck.
And you make a lot of money, of course.
Well, we try to pay the bills.
Joe, Andy Ockershausen, I'm talking to Joe diGenova, and we're going to take a break now and have on some very important spot that we will get paid for. Thank you, Joe.
Are you still promising yourself or your spouse to get your will updated and a good basic estate plan in place? Are you finally ready to make sure you don't leave a mess behind for your family to clean up? Give me just 2 hours and I'll show you how. I'm attorney Mike Collins, host of radio's Legally Speaking show. Come to my seminar and I'll teach you what you need to know about wills, trusts, taxes, probate, how to keep your money in your family. Register now at MikeCollins.com and I'll even waive the tuition. That's MikeCollins.com.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell you about Tony and Joe's and Nick's Riverside Grill at Washington Harbor in Georgetown. Spectacular new restaurants. We've spent a lot of time rebuilding. You'll love it. It's really fantastic. For any information, you can go online to TonyandJoes.com. It'll be a wonderful experience for the whole family. Call 202-944-4545 to make reservations. Everything is fabulous. You got to come down and have some wonderful food.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen. We're having a wonderful conversation, and it is a pleasure to be with him.
You should hear the stuff off air.
He's a very dear friend, Joe diGenova, with so much, Joe, that you know, and we listen to you on the radio, so a lot of people are going to hear this. A lot more people will hear this Comcast than hear you. I'm sorry, I mean this podcast. Why, Comcast is my old company that fired me, but they made a mistake. But talking about Benghazi, you got a great story about Benghazi.
Yeah, well, Victoria Tunsing and I, and Victoria did most of the work, but I was present for it, and we represented Greg Hicks, who was the deputy chief of mission at the time that Ambassador Stevens was murdered by the terrorists. And we'll never forget, Greg was a great hero. He helped the people organize that night. And what happened was, when he spoke to us from Tripoli, he said the American people have been lied to. Susan Rice had gone on television and lied on 5 consecutive television shows that it was the video, it wasn't a terrorism attack. They knew immediately in the administration that it was a terrorist attack.
Correct.
They knew that night. And in fact, the CIA had confirmed. And so Greg came back and he criticized privately inside the department Susan Rice and told the Hill that she had lied. That
she was NSA, right?
No, Susan Rice at that point was, I can't remember whether she was...
She had been at the UN.
Yeah, I think she was
the
National Security Advisor, right.
And
she lied. I mean, she went on television, Susan Rice, and lied
to
the American people.
Shows.
So what they did was they retaliated against Greg Hicks. They put him in a cubicle. They brought him back from Tripoli. They put him in a cubicle. They tried to strip him of all of his responsibilities, which they did. And then they tried to fire him. And Victoria worked desperately to help him, and she got Lindsey Graham to help, and eventually he was given a sabbatical so he could take a term at a think tank, and then he retired, and now he's doing national security work outside the government. But he's a great American, and this is why Hillary Clinton, I'm so delighted that she is not the president of the United States. Because let me ask you this question. How could you get up every morning knowing that you did absolutely nothing to save lives in Benghazi, you and Leon Panetta and everybody else associated? How in the world do they get up every morning and not have
clear
guilt?
conscience?
Not have guilt. And you know what? That's exactly why she never should have been president of the United States. And I say to all the people, all of us who worked on Benghazi and tried to make the American people aware of it, it's the best unpaid, free legal work we have ever done because it helped defeat her. And I'm glad it did.
Well, and, that proved that her whole problem was the secret stuff about not telling the truth about, how can anybody store all these things that she stored in her server?
Please.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
If any other civil servant had done what she did with that private server in their home, they would have been put on leave. They would have been suspended. They would have had their clearances revoked. They would have been prosecuted for violating the espionage statutes, and she gets away. She doesn't do anything, and Jim Comey says everything is fine. No reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. I said, I raised my hand at that point and said, appoint me, I will take the case.
You're reasonable.
I will take the case. I'm a reasonable prosecutor. I will take the case.
Whitewash.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, one of the things you never had, do you have any whitewash? One of the great things about you that I remember I grew up with, and that was Mayor Marion S. Barry, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
You're some of your run-ins.
The one. Well, Marion Barry was a very interesting public figure. He did a lot for the city in his own way.
Yes, he
did.
He
was beloved by the citizens. And at a time, this was a nascent democracy. They got home rule in 1974, although they had home rule much earlier in history under Boss Shepherd.
Right.
Who paved the streets,
who
put
built
in sewers.
Northwest Washington.
Yeah. But the bottom line is Marion Barry was a complex figure. Interestingly enough, he wasn't a crook. He didn't steal money.
Not a dime.
He was the kind of person. He had a dependency on drugs. He was a cocaine addict. During his entire tenure, they had to worry about whether or not he was going to pass out during meetings of the city council and the cabinet and all that. And he was a complex man. But you can't be a public official in the middle of a drug crisis and be a cocaine user. And the problem at that time in the 1980s was that practically everybody in the city was doing coke. And the wealthy people, poor people, people in government,
everywhere.
people in business, realtors, developers. And so the fact that Marion Barry was doing drugs didn't mean a lot to a lot of people. And what happened was that was the reason the city became a nightmare of drug peddling, guns, homicides, and killing. And that's because the culture in the city, which he led, and he was the biggest part of, was a pro-illegal drug use culture. And I don't know, where do you go from there? I mean, what do you expect is going to happen if you think that, using coke and heroin is great? All these kids died from overdoses.
Bad years.
I mean,
bad years.
Some of the worst crack cocaine came in during that period of time. And then we had all these other drugs.
Were you the prosecutor then? No,
yeah.
were you in private practice?
No, I was 5 years.
U.S. Attorney.
5 years. 5 years. During my tenure from 83 to 88, one of the worst thing. And of course, we had all kinds of government corruption. People were, we convicted all kinds of deputy mayors, and we investigated the mayor's drug dealer because what are you going to do? You find out the mayor's doing drugs, and you know who the drug dealer is. What the hell are you supposed to? Oh God, Rayfield.
Was that Edmonds? The guys that
No, that was Karen Johnson.
Oh, I remember that.
Karen
name,
Johnson?
Right? Sure,
Yeah.
I remember her.
Yeah.
Joe, you had some great things with our town, and that
did some spy cases and everything. We had a wonderful time. We did the first big terrorism case, which was you remember from suburban Maryland. There was a very fine Navy SEAL named Robert Stedham who was murdered on the tarmac in Beirut. TWA 847. Victoria, my wife, led that case, led the investigation, and we actually. It was in our office in Washington, D.C. That's where the venue was. And we actually went to Germany because the Germans accidentally captured the murderer. And they had him, and they just didn't want to keep him. They wanted to let him go. So they said, here's what the Germans thought. We have a great idea. Let's make all the people who were on the plane come over. We'll get Yuli Derrickson. Remember the famous stewardess who tried to prevent the hijackers from killing more people? He said, let's bring him over. We'll have a lineup. They'll never be able to identify him. We'll say it's not the right guy, and we'll send him back to Beirut. So we all go over with the witnesses. They have this crazy lineup.
How big a number of people? 100 people?
No, it was like 6 people.
Okay.
The passengers, the stewardess, and then a couple of other people. And the issue was they'll never be. So what do the Germans do? This is typical Germans, right? It's like keeping the Holocaust records, right? So that everybody could get them when the war was over. They get all these American soldiers from a local base who are swarthy looking and look like the guy. So, and they do makeup, and they make every one of them look exactly like the terrorist, thinking they'll never be able to. So we go into this, and then here's what they do. They give each one a number, and then they take them out and they put a different number on each one for each viewing. They go out Every single witness nailed the guy. And the reason was why. Every one of them said, I will never forget those eyes.
Wow. Nailed him through the eyes, huh?
So they had to keep him. And we wanted him extradited back to the Victoria wanted him extradited back to the United States. They wouldn't do it. So they kept it, and they tried him, and they convicted him. And then they ultimately released him a few years later. And then he was murdered. This is really interesting. An assassin killed him in Beirut.
Wow.
And he was targeted eventually.
Absolutely. They knew
it was actually...
probably his own people.
Intelligence operatives from all over the world were involved in this. They nailed... He was actually blown up in a car accident.
Alone, I hope.
Yeah.
Joe, what is the situation now worldwide? Is there still a great group of people spying? Everybody spying on everybody else now?
Spying is
but most of it's
much
on the web, isn't it?
Most of the spying that's done is done electronically.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
And given the access to information that people have because of the crazy devices that people use, it's pretty easy to spy on people. We saw from our own NSA program where we were scooping up all of the emails and phone data, what was called the mega data,
right?
That we could gather all of that, and it's very important, by the way, to have that. I'm in favor of gathering that data and then getting special warrants to go and look at it. I think it's crazy not to gather it. I think you got to be out of your mind not to gather it.
If they're out there, you got to find them
with people. What's going on in the world, but. There are still human spies. We have them in this country. We catch them all the time. What's a lot of industrial spying, in other words, like the Chinese and the Japanese and others try to steal from American companies because the most important thing to them is technology.
Right.
The Chinese are the worst. They're very smart. They're very good at what they do. And they have tremendous support from the Chinese government for their spying. They have special little towns where they do nothing but have spy centers where they train people and teach people. And we need a robust national security agency, and it's really a good thing that people don't know what the NSA can do, because if they knew, they wouldn't believe it. It's beyond Star Wars what the NSA can do.
I've heard about beyond Star Wars, and there's so much going on in that world that goes way over my head. But
that's why all this crap about Trump and the Russians. This is like a 2-minute investigation. They know this. Everybody at NSA knows whether they've got information or they don't. And the answer is they don't.
Right.
Because if they did, that would be leaked too.
Yeah, but this makes good headlines, though.
This is just
absolutely
so stupid. I tell you what I said. If I were the Attorney General, I would have a grand jury tomorrow. I would issue subpoenas to every senior former Obama administration official, put them in that grand jury, start asking them questions. And there's a very limited number of people that had access to those phone calls and the transcripts from them. Extremely limited. This is a no-brainer. You can do this in your sleep. A junior prosecutor can make this case. This is not like the old days. This is like, and John Brennan says he'd be happy to cooperate. He'd be the first one in the grand jury if I were running it.
Yeah, we want your cooperation.
Yeah.
Joe, this is a great conversation. It's a pleasure to be with you and to hear all these stories, because the good old days of tracing Marion Barry have been replaced by important job.
And just think,
you're a defense attorney.
Just think, D.C. statehood is just around the corner.
Who said that?
According to Muriel Bowser.
Oh, yeah, poor Muriel. She's stuck out there by saying we'll never have the Redskins, and the public doesn't care what she says. I don't know what your feelings are, but we want the Redskins to play in the city of Washington.
Build a stadium. There's plenty of money around to build a stadium.
Tear it down. There'll be money for that.
Oh, my gosh.
They can do it.
Of course there would be. And you know who will get it done? Trump. If they want to build a stadium, he'll say, do you want it done? I'll make sure it happens. He'll get the financing, he'll get the builder, and it'll be done on time, under budget, maybe done ahead of time.
We had the perfect guy to push that out with John Wilson, but he was a depressed.
Poor John, God bless him.
Yeah, he was depressed.
I remember meeting with him shortly before he died, and he was God bless him. He was a lovely man. He cared deeply about the city, but if you spent 5 minutes with him, you knew he was tortured by life. It was very sad.
Really.
And I liked him.
Great guy.
I really liked him. I thought he was one of the more decent politicians in this who cared. He was not corrupt. John Wilson was a really decent man.
Absolutely.
Really
and
decent
as you
guy.
said about Marion, of all the things we know about Marion, and we know a lot, And you know, he never was in it for the money.
Nah, he wasn't.
He
Mary
didn't
and Barry.
steal.
Mary wasn't. He wasn't a crook. He was just a drug-addled addict. I mean, that's what he was.
Very popular.
Booze,
figure in
women,
our
and
lives.
cocaine. Booze, women, and cocaine.
He used to always call me out of the blue to get on the air when he wanted some publicity.
God, put him
whatever.
on.
We took
Put him on.
He's a great guest.
Oh my God.
He
Yes.
did it like that.
Yeah.
So he excused himself and go in the other room. Come back. I'm ready.
Yeah, he was ready.
Except
Right?
Marion.
Oh my God.
But Joe, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm so pleased you're part of WML's life and our family, and
Yes.
and Victoria is. But we'll always be there for you. Maybe you don't get paid, but we'll be there for you, Joe. I mean, well, you did some work for us at Comcast Sportsnet too.
And once in a while.
Do they still call you now when they?
I haven't been there for about a year or so.
Roger
maybe two.
Kozak has taken over the whole world.
Has he?
defending.
God bless him.
He's back in school. He teaches at Pepperdine.
Right, right. I remember.
What a life. But, Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Please
Andy.
send our
Delighted to
best-
be here.
Send my love to Victoria.
Yes, Victoria.
And I hope to see you at your next birthday, because the next time I want to see you sing.
It's a deal.
We'll have a party for our second season. We hope you and Victoria will be here.
We
It's in
will.
May.
We promise.
Kick off on 2.
Okay, it's cool.
Joe diGenova, this has been Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen, and we've had a wonderful conversation.
You've been listening to Our Town, Season 2, presented by Geico, our hometown favorite, with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. Drop us a line with your comments or suggestions. See us on Facebook or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to Ken Hunter, our technical director, and WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcast. And thanks to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.